welcome. That's our 5 seconds of welcome. Slightly, no, I don't want any of this. Slightly different angle than we usually do. You get my Gibbons and Gerhard, Dr. Manhattan behind you for this. I just wanted to charge the phone, and it needs to be up on the thing to charge. A little less yellow this way too. This was a really interesting weekend. Yesterday, Sunday, was very, very busy. Similar to the Sunday when we did the comic carousel, and similar to the Sunday before that when we had Erica Henderson. But in both those instances, I was quite distracted by the fact that we had events. But I did notice a lot of the same people who come most Sundays, a lot of people just stopping in and looking around, a lot of people under the age of 20. And I clocked it, but I was busy doing other things. And this Sunday was more of that. Like this Sunday, I had resigned myself because we did 200 $300 of sales of the guests at the comic carousel of their stuff, at least. And I didn't expect to make that much money. Plus, and we really just didn't make that money. Although we were like 200 or 300 less than. It's pretty amazing. Because here's the thing. There's a lot of things I said today that I'm trying to put into words. I'm trying to put together. This is one of those times where I'm always wondering, like, if I was a better YouTuber, if I really was good at this, and I sat down and I really thought about what I was trying to say and put it out and did a whole video instead of a live discussing the three major important points of my business, if it would be a more popular YouTube channel. But then I think, who's got time for that? And I don't do it. But I mentioned a few things today. I mentioned my boys. I mentioned my relationship with reading comic books. And I mentioned psychic damage. This is not about you, Zeke. This is not, I said, not who you think it's about. I mentioned my boys to Emily. We were hanging out. And Joe here knows about my boys. Zeke, I'm not so sure you know about the boys. The boys are older than you, Zeke. They are guys, almost 30-year-old men who have been coming into my store since they were about 15 and 16. And the boys, as I call them, one of them lives in London. One of them got a perfect score on his SAT. He's a 30-year-old man who I know his SAT score because he came to the comic shop because he went out celebrating and he came in with his friends when he thought. One of them has been a banker and is back to his high school job of working at a grocery store, except now he's the manager. Like, I know these guys' lives. And I was talking about to Emily, the boys, the reason they're my boys is because that's really my goal in this store. Except for one of them, who is the only one who has a hold list, who regularly gets a insane amount of manga. Except for him, who's been doing that as long as I've known him, since he was, no, it's not true. The first couple of years he didn't get manga from me. From about 17 on, he's been getting an insane amount of manga. But except for him, the other 2 or 3, again, I don't see Jack that much. He's in London now. They buy a lot of comics, and they buy all sorts of comics, mostly characters they know or writers they know, but they buy a wide range. And I don't think, except for the manga one, that any of them would say, oh yeah, I'm a big comic guy. I love comics. Oh yeah, comics. They read some comics. They're in the mood for a comic, they'll come, and they hear about a good comic, they'll come get it. That's it. They read some comics. That's the reader, not that we're trying to create, but that our store is amazingly based on. I had a young girl in today, and she said, do you have, hold on one second. That I forgot that it was going to click me away completely. She said, do you have the second Tegan and Sarah book, Crush. I said, oh, I don't have it in stock. I can order it. But what did you like about it? Did you like the relationship? Did you like making a band? And she goes, oh, I love making the band. And I said, oh, did you read all Summer Long? She goes, yeah, Mark, you read all 3 books. She said, yeah. I said, did you read all this? Yep. Did you read this? Yep. Yep. And I was like, I looked at her and it hurt. I said, I'm really sorry. It's been a long time since we had a real serious comic reader in here. And I just haven't restocked as much as I should. But have you seen this? Do you like this? And she did end up leaving with the book. But like, there was a while 3 or 4 years ago that if a 12 to 14-year-old girl came in and read graphic novels, she'd read everything. They weren't the main ones. The main ones had just read, Raina or whatever. But there was a moment where I'd get 3 or 4 of those a week. So it was worth having more obscure, slightly more thoughtful. I showed her 4 or 5 options of books she hadn't read. She picked one. It was not so terrible. But the kids' market has changed. Meanwhile, that girl, Mike Robbins, is someone who always reads graphic novels. I've had tons and tons of 14 to 20-year-old groups of girls. It's the end of the summer. Camp is over. These girls usually work as counselors or they went away to camp. That's the area we live in. They're hanging out and they are, oh, did you read this? Of course. Oh, I read every Heartstopper. One of them's like, Heartstopper taught me what LGBTQA is. And the other one's going, you read all of these. She goes, I read every Raina, sure. And on Sunday, some 20-year-olds were like, you read American Born Chinese to their friend, right? And they're like, oh, of course I did. I talk about this all the time. That Raina generation happened. Raina Telgemeier built this generation. But you don't have to be a Raina Telgemeier kid. You don't have to have grown up reading all that stuff. There's the Marvel movies. There's Avatar: The Last Airbender, the show. There's the Teen Titans show. There's Teen Titans Go. There's all these things that are vaguely comic-oriented, comic-connected, or superhero connected that you can lean into and get into comics. The problem is where you go, who you talk to, what you think a comic book is so heavily influenced not by your friends who read comics or whatever, that's the part, but by your access to comic books. Unless someone shows you these illegal websites, you can't know about getting these comics off of legal websites. Unless someone shows you how to use the library system to order the actual books you want, not just the ones they have on the shelves. Unless someone shows you 746.15, Yeah, Teen Titans Go is awesome. Unless someone does that, you don't know that there's all this access to comics. But unless you come into my store, and I don't mean my store only, but unless you come into a store that carries the length and breadth and amount of that's not going to ask you, oh, did you like the Tegan and Sarah book because they come out, but says instead, well, what did you like about that book? And has multiple things to show you. I don't think I had a conversation with some teenagers today. One of my normal babbles about superhero movies, superhero comics, how these things, and you could see them being like, okay, this guy, my audio keeps cutting out. Thank you for letting me know. I haven't gone live on TikTok now in like a year, so I don't know what to tell you about that. If you move closer, maybe that'll help the audio, but that's all I can tell you. It wasn't, I get this. I get these kids very often. So I was like, whoa, all this stuff about superheroes. Like, I do. There's loads I don't know. I'm not bringing examples from comics I haven't read. So, but more than that, they're so interested in the fact that, like, the thing that I think is missing from so much mainstream media, missing from so much stuff that they see on television, even YouTube, even TikTok. There's 2 kinds of content creator. There's someone who only makes fully polished, amazing stuff. Yeah, they might show up behind the scenes of the fully polished, amazing stuff, but it's all about how well they do their craft, how much they show. And then there's people who just are a mess and they're willing to show you that mess. And occasionally they make something beautiful. And I think there's a kind of kid who loves that second thing. And that's what superhero comics have been for decades. That's what comic books in general are. A writer, let's say an Ed Brubaker is a great example. Ed Brubaker wrote comics for literally decades before he just dedicated himself to writing noir crime-based comics almost exclusively. Because he likes to try everything. He likes telling all sorts of stories. He likes doing different stuff. But this wow, he and Phillips, Brubaker and Phillips, they are the crime guys. You know, they did their first crime book years and years ago. This is the comic channel, Corey. I'm a comic shop. We're talking about comics. That's what we do here. And there's plenty of Ed Brubaker comics, plenty over at Marvel or DC they're fine. They're okay. But the comic companies keep chasing these, where are they? I'm not going to go up and get one, but the Marvel Compacts, right? The 1490, the DC Compacts, Marvel Premiere, DC Compacts. They keep chasing. We've got Prime stuff here, but the Prime stuff stands on a mountain of dreck. It stands on a mountain of semi-okay stuff, which is fine. This is mass-produced monthly entertainment. More single issues of a comic book come out a year for most comic books than episodes of peak television TV shows. They do like 10 episodes, 8 episodes. Comics have 12 or 14. It's the turnover time. It's insane. Yes, there's graphic novels, there's passion projects, there's different things. But I have had this conversation a few times, almost everything else has been for the last 2 days, but I've had this conversation a few times in the last couple of weeks where people are like, I don't understand why everyone says this is so good. And the answer is, well, it is really good for an ongoing series, 6-part series. That means that this came out every month for 6 months straight in 1993, and it was really impressive. But if you go read it now, no, it's not going to hold up to Penguia's work in Superman Lost with Christopher Priest's brilliant little time loops. It's not going to compare because Penguia and Priest got like a year and a half to work on that series. We're living in a different market, but Penguia and Priest Superman is not that tremendous. I love that series, and they could easily make one of those awesome DC animated movies out of it. But it's not like a basis that changes anything about Superman. It's not I haven't restocked it in a while. It's not like, oh, you got to read this to read Superman. It's just fun. It's just good. The Spider-Man movie that they just made, the number 4, I keep saying this. The reason that movie works is because it incorporates the fact that he's a lot of Spider-Man a lot of the time. It showed you tons and tons and tons of him just being Spider-Man. The first movie does it with Tobey Maguire, where he's on the streets and the newspapers like, where's Spider-Man? Masked Man. And all the people are like, oh yeah, he's like a spider. He's got like 8 arms. All that stuff is there to put into your head. Spider-Man all the time. It's just going around the streets doing this stuff. That's part of the joy of these stories with superheroes, that it's always happening. It's an ongoing thing. You don't continuity, finite stuff. I was just talking to someone about Deep Cut. Is it a deep cut if it's Crisis on Infinite Earths? Harbinger. And like, she's like Monitor's assistant, right? And then when Anti-Monitor traps Monitor, that's when she starts traveling to try and find help against the Anti-Monitor. And I was like, somewhere I feel like Crisis on Multiple Earths or whatever, one of those later 90s, 2000s ones, there's like, she wasn't a person. She was actually created from Monarch's energy or something. That was just like what he told her. Something like that. And he goes, so I mentioned this to a fan, who's like a fanboy fan. He goes, I don't think so. And I'm like, if not her, there's loads of examples like that. The character is perfectly fine as she created, but it's kind of dumb. Kind of doesn't work with what we've said about how the DC cosmology works later. So we're going to change that. No, it's just dumb. Just let it be dumb. Anyway, I had a conversation with these teenagers, as I was saying, and I basically said this not about continuity and that stuff, but just that like part of the joy of comics is the churn. Is there's lots. Like one of them bought Gillen and McKelvey's Young Justice, and I mentioned, the earlier Young Justice is where everyone's introduced, where they're new, because he said he always wants to learn the characters. but that's like a superhero book. And the superhero book, like I love Kate Bishop's introduction. It's one of my favorite, just so superhero comic things of the 21st century, where she's like, "Yeah, I'm Olympic level athlete, also a millionaire. I shoot arrows real good. Hawkeye is dead, so I'm Hawkeye now, and I'm gonna lead your bad team because you're not doing a very good job." Not what nonsense. Works fine. Anyway, that's the point. We want to create more people who just read comics, just have fun, just enjoy it. Tomorrow we're going to look at 25, I think 25 or 27 new books, including the second Martian Manhunter, some other really, really great books. And I hope you'll join us for that. Make sure you like, subscribe, and all that stuff so that you can see the new books and talk about, what's fun about comics. Until then, remember, damn it, babies, you got to be kind.